Hello everyone. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but I'm going to start reading Transforming the Mind. It's a very awesome book. If you're interested, you may listen along. If not, you may not listen. The meaning of transformation. The Tibetan term Lojong literally means training the mind or transforming the mind, and implies some kind of inner discipline. The whole point of transforming our heart and mind is to find happiness. When we speak about happiness and suffering, we are of course talking about our experience of happiness and suffering. So we are dealing with something that has a direct bearing on the human mind. Leaving aside the philosophical question of whether or not there is such a thing called consciousness that is distinct from our physical body. What is clear is that as human beings, we all have the natural desire to be happy and the wish to overcome suffering. This is a fact, so we can make it our starting point. Before developing this point in more detail, however, let us look very briefly at the nature of experience. I think that we can definitely say that experience takes place at the level of consciousness or mind. Because even though we talk about physical experience, they do not stem from the body alone. If we numb a particular part of our body, for example, we can no longer feel. So experience is related to feeling, and feeling in turn is related to consciousness. Broadly speaking, our experience fall into one category. One type of experience is more connected with our body and occurs mainly through our sense organs, while the other type is more related to what can be called the mental consciousness or the mind. So far as the physical level of experience is concerned, there is not much difference between ourselves and other animal species. Animals, too, have the capacity to feel both pain and well-being. But what perhaps distinguishes us human beings from other forms of life is that we have far more powerful mental experiences in the form of thought and emotion. Now, of course, we could speculate that there are certain species of animal that may also be capable of having this kind of experience, at least to some degree. Some animals may be capable of memory, for instance, but on the whole, it is fair to say that human beings have a greater capacity to experience things on the mental level. The fact that there are two broad categories of experience has some interesting implications. Most importantly, if a person's basic state of mind is serene and calm, then it is possible for this inner peace to overwhelm a painful physical experience. On the other hand, if someone is suffering from depression, anxiety, or any form of emotional distress, then even if he or she happens to be enjoying physical comfort, he will not really be able to experience the happiness that these could bring. So this shows that our state of mind, in terms of our attitude and emotions, play a crucial role in shaping the way we experience happiness and suffering. The Lojong teachings on transforming the mind offer a series of methods by which we can channel and discipline our mind, and so create the basis for the happiness we are seeking. We all know that there is an intimate connection between physical well-being and emotional well-being. We know, for example, that physical illnesses affect our state of mind, and that conversely, a greater degree of physical well-being contributes towards greater mental ease. Since we commonly recognize this correlation, many of us engage in physical practices and exercises to help bring about the physical well-being which will contribute to our mental refreshment. There are also certain traditional practices that are aimed at training our energy patterns. These are called prana yogas, or yogas of the wind energy. These days, yoga exercises have become very popular in the modern world too. This is precisely because many people have found that through yoga they can achieve a degree of physical health that leads to better mental health. The approach that is suggested by the Lojong teaching is slightly different. However, they concentrate directly on the development of the mind itself through the transformation of our attitudes and way of thinking. It is important to realize that any practice which actually transforms our hearts and minds is not something that can be imposed or forced upon us. In the case of physical exercise, on the contrary, some degree of pressure may be very effective in establishing discipline, but the mental discipline required for the transformation of our hearts and minds cannot come about as a result of force. It has to be based on voluntary acceptance, which, in turn, will be based on a personal recognition that certain attitudes and certain ways of being are beneficial, whereas others are not. Only then, on recognizing this, do we voluntarily take it upon ourselves to follow a spiritual discipline. This way of engaging with spiritual path is the only way that will transform our minds. It follows that the key to transforming our hearts and minds is to have an understanding of the way our thoughts and emotions work. We need to learn how to identify the opposing sides in our inner conflict. With anger, for example, we need to see how destructive anger is, and at the same time realize that there are antidotes within our own thoughts and emotions that we can use to counter it. So first, by understanding that effective thoughts and emotions are destructive and negative, and second, by trying to strengthen our positive thoughts and emotions, which are their antidotes, we can gradually reduce the force of our anger, hatred, and so on. However, when we decide to work with our anger and hatred, it is not significant simply to make a piteous wish, may anger not arise in me, or may I be free from hatred. Although this may be helpful, wishing alone won't really get you very far. You need to make a concerted effort to follow a conscious discipline, one that you apply throughout your life to reduce the effort of your anger and enhance its opposite, altruism. This is the way to discipline the mind. The way to examine how thoughts and emotions arise in us through introspection. It is quite natural for many different thoughts and emotions to arise. Why this should be is, of course, a philosophical question. According to Buddhist philosophy, many of them arise from past habits and karma, which give rise to an individual's propensity for thinking and feeling. However that may be, the fact is that various thoughts and emotions do arise in us, and when we leave them unexamined and untamed, this leads to untold problems, crisis, suffering, and misery. This is why we need to adapt the conscious discipline we spoke of earlier. In order to reduce the power of a negative emotion like anger or hatred, we need to encourage its antidote, which is love and compassion. It is not enough to recognize that this is what is required, just as it is not enough to simply wish that love and compassion should increase in us. We have to make a sustained effort again and again to cultivate the positive aspects within us. And the key here is to constant familiarity. Sorry, I'm so bad at that word. The nature of human thoughts and emotions is such that the more you engage in them and the more you develop them, the more powerful they become. Therefore, we have to develop love and compassion consciously in order to enhance their strength. We are, in fact, talking about a way of cultivating habits that are positive. We do this through meditation. and I will be back to read more. Thank you.